Hello everyone and welcome to this week's of Organic Matters, the podcast brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. And I'm joined by Mary Lynch, who's an organic farming advisor. Mary, thank you very much for joining us. We were having a good chat before this, and I guess there's a lot of farmers around the country having a chat about it. It's the 1.5 billion acre scheme that's been announced. That's the new flagship agri-environment scheme that'll be the successor to GLAS, which would have been the green low carbon agri-environment scheme. So the acronym is probably just as long as the last one. But what else do we know about it for organic farmers out there who are listening?
Well, I suppose the good thing for organic farmers out there who are listening is that they will get priority access into the new acre scheme. So they will go straight from their GLAS contract finishing on the 31st of December 22 straight into acres contract starting on the 1st of January 2023. So that's a good, because before this we've had maybe 2 or 3 months where there've been no payments because waiting for a new scheme to get up and running. So we're expecting acres will be fully open probably sometime in the start of September. We're now the end of June, we're expecting terms and conditions early in July. And that's really the important part, because it's how the organic payments interact with the area-based payments in acres, and how much farmers are able to get along with their organic payment. And they're the big ones really. So how the organic farming scheme interacts with the new acre scheme it's really the important thing. Now, most farmers during the summer months will have access to an AETS course, which is Agricultural Environmental Training Scheme course, which is going to go where the farmer can attend a 6-hour session. They'll get paid €156 for doing it with their advisor, and they have 3 hours inside in a kind of classroom situation going through all the new schemes. The suckler welfare, all the acres, the new base, and they'll spend 3 hours out on a farm kind of going through what the practical measures would look like. And that's going to be a big help to most farmers. So I suppose that's the thing, talk to your advisor. If your advisor doesn't have it, there'll be a list of AETS courses up on the department's website. And that's going to, the department are actually paying farmers this time around now to get educated on what their options are going to be, because it is going to be complicated, and it's going to be maybe a little bit more complicated for organic farmers if there is going to be restrictions on payments on some measures because we are organic. And so it really will take a bit of time sitting down and educating yourself beforehand to see what measures would suit your farm. Like, a lot of them are going to be very similar to GLAS. I suppose the difference for most organic farmers is they weren't in REAP, and we weren't allowed into REAP, so therefore we probably didn't take as much notice of it. But for a lot of the area-based payments, it's going to be the number of species you have, target species that you have in your grassland. So for the traditional haymaker and for the what you used to call LIP, the low input permanent pasture, these are going to be narrow, not just what you do in them, it's actually going to be how biodiverse the grass species and the flowers and the herb species are in the meadow, in the field. That's what you're going to get paid on. So
I guess just to take it back just a tiny bit for people. So there are, based on where you are in the country, there are 2 payment levels. So the general approach, which is most of the country, it'll be a maximum payment of, I think it's like you said, I think it's €7,331. And for the farmers that are in, they're calling them cooperative kind of areas, it'll be potentially a higher payment of is it over €10,000? I think it is
500. Yeah, 10,500.
So
though they're very specific areas. Basically,
yeah.
If you're not in an SAC or on a commonage, you probably aren't going to be in those areas.
Yeah, and it's places like Connacht and Donegal. There are maps available if anyone's interested. Just check it out on the internet, so you can see if you're in those areas or not, and you'll know what to prepare for. So that'll be interesting. And there's different tiers as well. So there's a tier 1 and a tier 2 and a tier 3. And like you were mentioning as well, the tier 1 organic farmers are going to get priority access if they want to go into the scheme. But I guess then the next element of it is that it's still a little bit woolly on the details. We do know it's going to be, the measures are going to be similar to gloss, but we just haven't got all of the details yet about all of the measures, have we?
No, and that's what we're waiting for. And I suppose that's the real important part of it for organic farmers, is to see what measures are going to be paid on, how much they're going to be paid. Is there going to be a double payment? Are we going to get a full area-based payment and our organic payment, which the last time we weren't allowed? Is it only going to be a partial organic payment with the full area-based payment? And it's going to be another week or two before we know that level of detail, and also the level of detail of how much each measure is going to be worth. So you're going to be seeing new hedgerows, how much is that going to be worth per metre that you would put in. You know, your whatever the lip will be called this around the low input permanent pasture, you know, how many species, how much payment will you get if you have 4 target species? How much payment will you get if you have 6? How much payment will you get? The maximum usually is 10. So if you have 10 species, what is the maximum payment going to be? And so that's where the level of detail, I suppose, that most organic farmers are actually going to want to see, because they're the one where you can sit down, you can say, okay, I'll do 100 meters of new hedgerow, or I'll coppice and I'll get that much payment. I'll do traditional hay meadow and I'll get this much payment. I'll do protection of water courses, there's one of those, and I'll get this payment. So it's a matter of, that's what will happen at that stage, and that's when people will decide, is it worth my while doing this work? Have I suitable places on the farm that I could maybe put in a small coppice and get paid a bit for that? You know, they're all the ones that are going to be to take a little bit of time for each farmer to sit down with their agri advisor to work out exactly how they're going to maximize their payments. Because the reality,
it does seem to require a bit more thought, though, as it was what you were saying as well. So like, we do need to know the details, because say on anyone's farm, if you're planning on planting a hedge somewhere, you kind of need to be starting planning it now, in terms of, I'll set aside that area, or when I'm going to order hedging, because it has to go in at a certain period. So it is, those details are important. And that scheme, in terms of the training that you were mentioning as well, yes. I mean, what should farmers be aware for that? Is that something they can leave to their advisor, or is it something they can do themselves?
They can do themselves. They can register on their ag food account their interest and apply to the scheme, and then they can talk to their advisor. Now, they don't have to, you know, they can go with someone else. If they don't have to go with their own advisor, they can go with someone maybe who's nearer them, or, you know, it'll depend where the location and the dates will suit them. And then they'll submit their list, and then you'll be able to attend that course, and your payment will then come through your through the advisor who does the scheme. So they will be collecting your bank details, the money will be paid to the advisor, and the advisor will pay it out to the farmer then. So it's a great, listen, it's great, because the schemes have got more complicated, and it's great that we're being given the time during the summer months before the schemes are really started up to inform farmers of all their choices. So they have they have time to go home, read up a bit about it. They'll be given some documentation at the courses, and they'll be able to make better informed decisions then, as well, as to what suits them. Because the schemes have got more complicated. And I suppose for a lot of organic farmers, you know, they've probably been in those agri-environmental schemes since reps 1 or reps 2, and you know, so they might have a lot of, I suppose, the easy measures done, and so they mightn't have anywhere left to put in a new hedgerow. You know, they might have all their hedgerows coppiced, you know, so therefore they'll have to look at what options will suit them.
In terms, I guess, you know, it wasn't a huge volume of new organic farmers who applied to the scheme recently, over the last couple of months, and the scheme will be opening again in the autumn, and the rates are changing next year in the next cap. So I think I have a list of, if you're a horticulture farmer and you're going into conversion, it'll be €600 per hectare for the first 2 years in conversion. Tillage going up to €290 per hectare. Dry stock, €250 per hectare. That's staying the same as it as it was for the conversion period. And then dairy, pardon?
Yeah, but it's not changing for those who are organic. The proposal at the moment is still that we would only stay on the 170.
70, yeah. This is just the 2-year conversion period, and then the dairy conversion period will go up to €330 per hectare, and it'll come back down to €250 per hectare after the conversion period, or for those who are already fully organic as well. So like you said, things are changing as well.
Yeah, and the payments are going up now as well. So whereas in the last organic farming scheme, you were only paid up to 60 hectares, we're now going up to 70, and the stocking rate has been reduced. So I suppose for some farmers who struggled, especially those doing summer only grazing and buying in cattle, they need to buy in less now to be compliant with the scheme. So, and I suppose it's going to encourage more lower stocking rate farms, maybe with just maybe poorer soils or more extensive farming, that they're now going to be able to get the full organic payment as well. So that's going
is it kind of like balancing kind of two halves though, because on the one side you have the lower stocking rate to hopefully entice more farmers in, but at the same time I talk to some organic dairy farmers, and while organic dairy you can't go into derogation, with the new nitrates rules that are coming into force, they are worried that that's going to impact them, and yet the department say they want more organic dairy farmers. Have you heard any concern about nitrates levels, about the banding rules that are coming in?
Yeah, I suppose it would only affect a very small few of the dairy farmers. Like most dairy farmers wouldn't be anywhere near 170 kgs for organic in. There might be some farmers that have been exporting some slurry to stay under, and now that the values of that slurry is, the nitrogen in that slurry has been reduced by half. So therefore, and the rules for organic is you must export to another organic farmer. So I suppose it's harder for some of them. But from the majority of organic dairy farmers, I don't think it's going to be a huge issue. But we'll have to see. But that 170 is written into the organic regulation, so that's unlikely to change.
And I guess we had a walk a week or two ago, and you were involved in arranging it with the Tipperary Limerick Organic Farmers Discussion Group, and a few things came up there. Was there anything that kind of stood out for you on the walk that was discussed on the night?
I suppose one of the big discussions that were on the night was that it was on Pat O'Connor's farm, and he's a stockless tillage farmer, and Pat's choice generally is not to import a lot of farm manure and slurry, because he's thinking on it is that it's going to cost him money and that the resulting yield isn't enough to cover the cost of importing. Now, he does some with a neighbouring dairy farmer, but I suppose his yields were a little bit lower than most mixed organic farms would be expecting. So he was happy if he was getting 1.2 or 1.3 tons per acre, whereas most of us who have mixed farms, we're hoping to get, somewhere up around 2 tons per acre, because we have more farm manure and slurry available because we have cattle as well on the farms. So I suppose that was one of the talking points, whether, it was worth his while bringing in more nutrients so that he could increase his levels. But in general, his crops were very good. They were very clean. Obviously, it was before the rain came, so conditions were very dry, and that was probably hampering some of the wheat growth as well. But so I suppose every farmer makes their own financial decisions like that to see what suits them, and the same thing will happen now with the new acres. Is it worth going into this? Is it worth getting that payment? Maybe do I have to do too much to get it? It's going to cost me more than it's worth. So they were kind of some of the discussions that we were having. I suppose one of the other issues was cover crops, obviously, because Pat is stockless, trying to get organic matter back into the soil. And to keep the organic matter levels up in the soil is a big issue. So he was chopping back all his straw, and he was looking at putting crops in during the winter, or having green manure breaks, so that he can build up nitrogen but also build up organic matter in the soil.
Was there an issue that came up because there were one or two other farmers there that were stockless, and they were talking about the value of chopping straw, but they were also talking about applying for TAMs and certain machinery on TAMs. And there was an issue whereby, because they were stockless, they didn't actually qualify for a machine that would then help them in their farm enterprise. There seemed to be an issue around that got discussed.
Yes, so the issue was in relation to getting toppers or mulchers. So the likes of Pat, if he put in red clover or white clover as a green manure break, and he wanted to just top it for the year and mulch it back into the ground. So that obviously he's building up the nutrients, but also building up the organic matter in the soil by letting the clippings rot back into the soil. So because he didn't have stock, the current TAMS doesn't allow him, it only allows you to get a topper or a mulcher, topping mulcher, if you have if you've stock. So it's one of the ones we have highlighted at a good few months back. I think at the start of the year, IOA looked for a list of other machines that should be added to the TAMS list for the next time round. And it's one of the things that we did highlight to them, and that list has gone to the department, and Jack Nolan from the Department of Agriculture was there in the night, and he said he'd follow up on it, because I suppose it's something that most of the people in the department don't, because we're such a small sector, they don't realise why we would need these machines, and it was just overlooked. And there was a few, there's a few anomalies like that in the TAMS, like that you only get the ones I've come across is you only get irrigation, you only get funding for irrigation if you're putting up a new polytunnel, but if your irrigation has gone out of date or has been damaged, you won't get it if you have existing tunnels. There's a few things like that, so we've looked them to be separated or changed the rules around so that they would be more suitable for organic farmers, as well as looking for some maybe new machines. You know, it's 7 years really since most of the TAMS machines were set out. And so, you know, there are things moved on in that period of time that we now need funding for as well. So the department have that list, and hopefully it'll be taken into account. And I suppose the good thing then for TAMS in the next round, which will start, you know, on the 1st of January 2023, is that organic farmers are going to be eligible for 50% grant aid for TAMS instead of the current 40%.
Yeah, and that's very important as well. And I'm wondering, because I mean, I've been reading your pieces in the Organic Matters magazine for quite a while now, and I know other people have been reading you and listening to you, and you have a wealth of experience built up over the years. What do you find the attitude is to organics now? Have you got more interest? Have you got farmers contacting you kind of in this kind of push that seems to be happening nationally? Is a little bit of a wave starting, do you think?
A little bit of a wave, but it's not a tsunami by any means. You know, so there is interest out there, but a lot of the farmers are waiting to see what Acres is going to offer them as well. So I think one of the important things is that the two schemes will work well together. But there is interest, and I suppose with the price of fertilizer going up this year, that made a lot of farmers look at it. And you know, if you follow the farming press, you'll see that Teagasc now are saying that a lot of more extensive beef farmers should be looking at going organic, because with the price of fertilizer, it doesn't make any sense for them to be spreading a lot of fertilizer. So there are things, but I suppose on the other side of it is that we've had strong prices for our products for this year. So in a lot of cases, the differential between the organic price and the conventional price have been eroded this year as the conventional price has come up. So I suppose that's making some of the new people who are looking at it a little bit more wary, and that they're going to be saying to themselves, you know, what is the premium for organic? Is to be a premium for organic? But I suppose I'd be saying to a lot of farmers is, listen, if you can cut your cost, keep your cost low, so that you're producing your product as cheaply as you can, and you're making use of the schemes that are out there, Acres, the organic farming scheme payment, that you should still be better off as an organic farmer, even without, you know, even if the premium comes down to a 5 or 10% premium. I suppose a lot of us, we've got used to having a 20% premium for a lot of the time. It's hard to know whether that'll be there in the future, as you know, as the price goes up and people are struggling with cost of living, and they may not be willing to pay very high premiums for organic food when they're buying it in the supermarket.
Yeah, you'd hope that you'd still have the customer base there, or that you would have built up the customer loyalty over the time. And I think maybe even we saw a lot of outpouring of support for Glenisk, and that still seems to be there as well during the fire. So hopefully people realise what an important market it is. I mentioned that you usually write the advice for farmers in Organic Matters, but maybe you might tell us some of the advice, give us a sneak peek of what you might be writing about for farmers for the coming year, I suppose, over the summer months anyway.
Well, I suppose over the summer months going into the autumn, like for most of the organic farmers who are grassland farmers, the most important thing is managing clover and getting the maximum out of their clover swards and not, I suppose, damaging the clover they have, and to maintain the swards as best they can. So, you know, it is about topping when it needs to be, because that's the way in a grassland farm we keep our weeds down. So from now on, before any of the weeds go to seed, topping is very important. And it is, you know, we talked about Tams there, it is probably one of the things that most farmers have invested in when they become organic, is a good topper. So that you are, you know, it's nice and sharp, that you are able to go out and even sometimes top high if you need to control certain weeds like docks. But yeah, so that's important. And then grazing off the swards going into the autumn, so that you're letting light down into the sward during the winter months, so that the clover gets a chance to build up the energy in the stolon, so that it's going to survive for next year. So that's really, they're the most important things. It's trying to get as much as we can out of the fodder we're able to produce in the farms ourselves, and try not be as dependent on imported feed, because, you know, with the way things are in the world at the moment, the cost of imported concentrate, and especially organic ones, is going to continue to increase. So we have to try and make quality fodder over the summer months. We have to manage the grassland fields that we have, so that they're producing the best possible feed for our stock, so that we're getting the best weight gain or the best milk yields from grass. And that's how we're going to manage to be you know, as profitable as we can on our organic farms. Because for most of us, especially those of us who are making a full-time living from farming, that's very important. It's great being organic, but the farms also have to be profitable.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sums it up nicely. Mary, thank you very much. And for anyone listening, make sure that you get the Organic Matters magazine to read up on Mary's advice as well. It's always very valuable. But for everyone else, thank you very much for tuning in. This has been the Organic Matters podcast, brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. And if you want any more information about organics, go to www.irishorganicassociation.ie. But for now, thank you very much and take care.